Thank you.
Right. Good evening, everybody. I welcome you to this first virtual pension board meeting. Can you all hear me?
Yes.
Yes, thank you.
Yes.
We ought to be clear that we're all in communication, really. I haven't got any pictures except of Gerald, but apart from that, all is well.
If people have got the video off, could they switch it on, please, so we can...
Apart from anything else, I'd like to welcome Jeremy, who we can't see, but it's his first meeting of the pension board, and we hope he'll find it a thoroughly enjoyable evening.
Thank you very much.
Okay, so it's best if people keep their microphones on mute, because we don't, otherwise we'll pick up background noise. But it makes it slightly more friendly if people who can switch on their videos, but that doesn't seem to be entirely possible at this point now. Oh, Gerald's gone as well. Jeremy's there, good. I do like somebody to speak to. It's a bit difficult really with 7 circles, and well, you're there, Jeremy, so that's okay. Right, apologies for absence. There can't be any apologies for absence, I don't think, can there? Because we're all here.
I've got the video on, Richard. You should be able to see me.
No, I can't see you. But that might be my bandwidth.
I don't know why.
Well, it might be something to do with the fact that my broadband's not strong enough to take the pictures.
Colleagues, we can see you from this end, and we're casting out live all the videos links that are shared. Thank you.
Okay, shall we move on? Declaration of interest. Are there any declaration of interest from members present in the virtual meeting? If so, you'll have to give me the detail of what those declaration of interest is. No declarations of interest. Our next item on the agenda is actually the appointment of vice chair. Do I have any nominations for the appointment of vice chair? Well, shall I nominate Gerald to continue then as vice chair, as he's done it for the last few years? Would Councillor Lee be happy with that?
Yes, I approve that. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much. So that we'll therefore we need a second. Well, no, I nominated and James Lee, Councillor Lee seconded, so that's fine. So Gerald is therefore appointed vice chair for the 2021 municipal year. Congratulations, Gerald. Minutes of the meeting on the 8th of January 2020. There are any points that anybody wishes to make on the accuracy of the minutes? Are you all happy, therefore, with the minutes? Well,
I've got some comments to make. They're not as to accuracy, though, Richard.
Well, they really should only be for accuracy. But tell me what they are, Gerald.
Well, number 59. We were told the officer informed the board that a report would be submitted on source of future performance measurements report, ideally something comparable to PIRC. I assume we're still awaiting for that. Is that right? Or have I lost the track?
Yeah, that's correct. That's correct. That's correct, Chairman. I've been here about 6 weeks, and that hadn't been progressed in the period since the last meeting until I came, and it's something that's on my list of things to do during the autumn.
I'm not complaining you haven't done it, Jeremy, please. I'm really not. I'm just saying, that's why I asked the question. Is it, have I missed it, or is it, yeah, it is something we're still awaiting? Right, okay, that's fine. Okay, so minute 60, number bracket 2 bracket says future performance monitoring reports include a line on complaints, both active and resolved. The same applies to that, I assume, Jeremy.
Jeremy,
those
have you got a comment on that?
The only comment I've got is that there are no active, to my knowledge, there are no active unresolved complaints.
Yeah, but
you were wanting, as part of the pensions admin report, you were wanting complaint stats.
Yeah, so it would be 0 then, wouldn't it?
I believe it to be 0, Chair.
It would be a nil return.
We'll include them explicitly in the next report.
Thank you. The next one is on 61, the third bullet point. It says the TPR report was separate and it took on board the views of the board expressed at earlier meetings. The officer undertook to circulate a paper copy of the report. Well, I don't recall receiving it. So could we have it, please?
Well, perhaps that could be resent or sent.
Yeah, we'll look to resending that.
Yeah, we'll dig that out. Yeah.
Right, the next one is 62. We've got the issue about the increase the membership of the board, and a report was going to be prepared about that. So can we have a report on that as well, please? I say I'm not making a point it hasn't been done, Jeremy. I do understand you've only been there a few weeks. I get that entirely.
That one, there is a report on this agenda, Chairman.
Yeah, there's a report about the vacancies.
Well, we'll take it when we get to that item. We'll
okay.
An update. Right, is that it?
Yes.
Happy, Joe?
Yes.
Right, good. That's the minutes then. And so public questions, I received no notice of any public questions. Petitions, I think there are no petitions. I think there are no deputations. So we move to item 7, the Pension Fund Committee, and the report for that is attached at page 9. Who's going to introduce that?
I will, Chair, if I switch my microphone on. Yeah, this report summarises the business that took place at the at last week's pension committee. There's an update which includes the decisions taken by the committee, which is on the supplemental agenda, which was published earlier this week.
Yes.
So I don't propose to read out the decisions on that. I think it's probably I think probably everyone can read that, and it's probably better to take any questions on it, Chair, if that's okay with you.
Yes, that's fine. I was present in the meeting as an observer in the audience, and I have to say I thoroughly enjoyed it. Gerald or Councillor Lee, have you got any questions on the report?
No, thank you.
I mean, it's very difficult because, as I understand it, this was the first pensions committee for a number of months as well. Is that right?
Yeah, that's correct.
Yes, that is correct.
So we've sort of, quite understandably, but we've sort of missed the flow of things really in all this. But that's one of those things, isn't it? It's just not possible to keep on with. Councillor Lee, are you happy?
Yes, I am very happy with that. Thank you very much. I've got no questions to ask.
Okay. Right. Then we'll move on. Pension 9 is the pensions admin performance monitoring.
Have we skipped the annual report?
Oh, sorry. Yeah, we have.
Sorry, Chairman.
No, that's chair's incompetence. That's fine. So draft annual report at page 19, in fact.
Yeah. If I can just say a couple of words about this one, Chair. This is obviously the draft annual report. It's subject to audit, and Mazars are just about to start their field work. The audit plan we've included as an attachment to this report for the board's reference. The intention is that, and Mazars tell us they're on track for this, is that the audit of both the pension fund accounts and the council's main accounts will be completed in time for them to report to the Governance, Audit, Risk Management and Standards Committee on the 22nd of October. And then the final audited report will be published by the 1st of December. And for the board's reference, that's the only date in this year's reporting timetable that hasn't been changed as a result of the COVID pandemic. Essentially, the report summarises, what the authority's done in terms of its management of the local government pension scheme in Harrow, covering its management of the investment assets, management of employers who are members of the fund, and also the liabilities and scheme members benefits and records. Been some fairly small increases in the year of the report on in terms of both numbers of pensioners and deferred members, and also a small decrease in the number of active members. So the fund is slightly more mature than it was at this time at the same time last year. The council remains the biggest employer with 15,200 of about 18,450 members, that's about 82.5%. And there are 39 other employers, mostly academic institutions, varying in size from having 3 members in total to 319. The scheme assets fell in value in the year from 850 million to 775 million. And that essentially was largely a timing issue. The reporting date of the 31st of March was literally shortly after the global lockdowns, and particularly the European part of the global lockdowns had been in operation for maybe 2 to 3 or 4 weeks. And there has been a significant recovery in asset values since then, to the extent that at the end of July, for example, the fund's value was back up at 877 million. Although I should add that investment performance investment valuations do remain a little bit volatile. I think that'll do, Chair. Thank you.
Yeah. So, Gerald, have you got any points?
No, because it's beyond my ability to make comments on all this financial stuff. It's way outside my pay grade to be able to do that. And the only comment, I did actually go through it. I ploughed through the whole lot. I take the point about the volatilities of the volatility of the markets, and I guess that's going to go on throughout 2021 and probably way beyond there. And I would think being an investment advisor at the current time is just like juggling balls, and anyone might fall at any time. And it's not that I'm sympathetic or empathetic to them, because they get paid a lot of money for doing it, but it must be very difficult for them. And the only real comment I've got is, and I know what I've read several times the letter Dawn sent me on the 2nd of September, but respectfully, I think the Harrow is in legal non-compliance, because there are only 3 members of the board. You need a minimum of 4 under the legislation. And I'm saying this not on the basis because I've done the research. I'm saying it because the last full day SIPFA course I went to, quite out of the blue, from my point of view, this came up. And I am told that it's not just the view of the experts, it's the view of the pensions regulator. So
Well,
I'm not saying this just because I've gone round as a retired lawyer reading up the legislation, although I did have a look at the legislation actually. I did that after it being brought to my attention. Sorry, so we're not legally the authority is not the fund is not legally compliant.
I'm sorry, but we're going to deal with the status of the vacancies under 10. And
no, but this is covered in the annual report as claim that it's legally compliant. I disagree. I know the authority thinks differently. I'm putting on record I disagree.
Are you saying it says that the pension board is legally compliant?
It says that it says there are no legal. They've got nothing. No legal. There's nothing legal that they're not complying with. That's as far as I'm concerned. I'm sorry, I disagree with that, and I'm simply putting that on the record. And I'm putting it on the record on the basis of what came out at a SIPFA course and is apparently said by the pensions regulator. And I know Dawn takes a different view. I disagree.
I don't want to split hairs. I don't want to split hairs, but I doubt whether that makes the actual annual report unlawful.
I didn't say the report was unlawful. I said it's factually incorrect.
Well, I'm not sure that it is really, because it's with the pension board is part of the governance arrangements. It's not part of the legal structure of the actual pension fund. I think the annual report is on the pension fund. Dawn, do you want to comment on this?
No, I just wanted to clarify because Gerald, you kept flicking between talking about the pension fund and the pension board. And I think if you're going to say the pension fund itself is not legally in compliance. The response that I did send you was about the query about the membership of the pension board that you raised, and I did comment I didn't believe that it was not compliant. And as the chair says, we're going to cover that later on, but you keep referring to the fund, and I don't believe that the fund is not compliant, which is what the annual report refers to. The annual report refers to the board as well. I can't point you to the sentence, but it's in there. So it's not me who writes the annual report, Dawn, with all due respect. It's whoever put this together. So that's the reason I mention it. I've said my.
Dawn says in the. Sorry, Gerald.
Yeah.
Dawn says in the introduction here that in line with the provisions of the Public Service Pensions Act 2013, the Council set up a local pension board in 2015 to oversee the governance of the pension fund.
Yeah.
In 1920, the pension board met 3 times and considered reports on pension administration, performance and pension fund governance arrangements. But that's a statement of fact. I mean, we did that.
Yes, I'm not disagreeing with that. That's correct.
Yep. Okay. Well, I've got 1 or 2 questions on the actual annual report. I'm sure the pension committee must be concerned at the annual performance. I mean, accepting that the 1-year performance is distorted by events, worldwide events, the 3-year and 5-year figures can't all rely on that 1 year to have lessened the performance. The performance is not great, is it? It's well below benchmark, even over a 5-year period. So what are the pension committee doing about that?
Yeah, if I can answer that, Chair, the pension fund committee is now reviewing its investment strategy, and since the committee last week, we've started some detailed work on that with Aon, both in terms of reviewing the strategic allocation of the fund's investments into three types of asset, and also initially, because it's the largest block of assets, the equities portfolio and the makeup of the equities portfolio, which is where the significant underperformance has occurred. So the committee is now starting to address that, Chairman. You could argue that possibly they should have acted to address it sooner. I'm not going to comment on that as I wasn't here, but certainly I wouldn't disagree that the the 3 and 5 year performance figures aren't particularly good, and the committee is reviewing its investment strategy.
I mean, this is a bit of a strange question, really, but bear with me and humour me by giving me some kind of answer. Did in this year that we're looking at here, is there any effect from the pooling, or is that something that really is too near the start to actually come through to make any difference to the thing of the fund?
The most significant thing about pooling is that some investments that were previously managed in individual mandates are now managed under collective arrangements negotiated by the London CIV. So there is a benefit in terms of the amount of fees being paid to those investment managers, particularly on the BlackRock passive fund. But of course, if you have the same manager inside the CIV as you had outside, it's not going to have the pooling isn't going to have any impact on performance beyond the impact of those fee savings and any compounding effect of those. But as you say, it's fairly early days to have a compounding effect of those savings. The other changes are much earlier in their life cycles. For example, the infrastructure fund is only at a very early stage, and the move into the MAC fund is a relatively recent thing as well.
Yeah, I mean, I noticed that 1920 the investment management expenses were down by about £500,000, which isn't a huge benefit. Well, not as huge a benefit as George Osborne originally told us we were going to make from pooling our assets, but presumably the estimates for 2021 show a greater fall than that.
Well, we would hope so. Yes. Yeah.
Okay, but you're not able to forecast what that sort of thing might be.
Not at the moment. No, I'm not going to forecast that because the fees paid to investment managers are driven by the value of the assets under management, and so to some extent the actual impact depends on how the valuations move as well. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I see that. And is there a particular reason why the administrative costs have gone up in the year? I mean, they're not very high anyway, but in percentage terms, there was quite an increase in 1920 over 1819, page 30.
Do you mean the oversight and governance ones?
I'm looking at the administrative costs on page 8 of this report.
Page 8, yeah. The reason for the increase in the oversight and governance figure is it was the triennial valuation.
Oh.
And so you have a big chunk of actuaries fees paid every third year, and
yeah,
but that's the third line, the oversight and governance going up from 566 to 634.
I think you must be on a different page to me.
Oh, it's on page 8. There's a table on page 8 of the report.
Yeah, I've got that. That's what I was looking at. But it says administrative costs, total cost.
I was looking
from 656 to 721. That was what I was querying.
I'm not sure of the reason. I'm not sure of the reason for that, unless we had any extra staff or some software changes. It can only be one of those two things. So I'm not sure of the reason for that.
Really? Yeah. Okay, that's fine. But
the figure I was talking about was the next one, the oversight and governance.
We haven't, just to confirm, we haven't had any additional staff, so it'll be software changes.
Oh, right. Okay. That's fine. That's very helpful.
I think you've told us there are 8 staff, haven't you, Dawn? There are 8.
In the pension fund team.
Yes. I can't remember whether they're all full time, but I think we're told somewhere in these papers there are 8 of them.
Yeah.
I think it's been that number now for actually it was until a couple of years ago. It was more. It's gone down in.
So we have reduced the team
Yeah.
by a couple of FTE. Not everybody's permanent. So we might have 8 people, but it's probably 7 point something FTE.
Yeah. Yes. I don't think anyone could say that they were that there were too many people there. I think I've worried over the years whether there are enough people there rather than too many. But I don't think it's that.
No, I don't think. No, we haven't. I was just saying we haven't employed any extra people. So if there's an additional admin cost, it'll be service update, software updates and such.
Or is it possible that it's reallocation of expenses from the centre?
No, they won't have gone up. So if you're referring to something like support services in terms of the council, that's at the same rate every year. We wouldn't. There was no reason to increase them in that particular year, so it won't have been that.
Okay, thank you for that information.
I think my last question is this is another probably somewhat strange question, but what's the figure that's gone in as our FRS 102 or whatever it is these days in the balance sheet? I can't find where it is in here. It must be in here somewhere. But because the difficulty is, isn't it, that the valuation at the 31st of March was depressed, and therefore I suppose the deficit on the fund was increased. Is that right?
Yeah. We've got those figures, haven't we, Jeremy? But I can't remember where they are in this.
They're not in the pension fund accounts. They're in the authority's main accounts because the FRS 102 relates to the authority's position as an employer.
Yes.
So that will only be a part of the pension fund. That bit of the pension fund that relates to Harrow.
But you don't know how that's gone up at the end of March.
Off the top of not in terms of FRS 102 figures. No, off the top of my head, I don't. I can find that easily because it's in the GARB's agenda.
If you just send me an email sometime and tell me what that is, I'd be most interested.
Yeah.
Okay, Councillor Lee, have you got any points on the report?
Excuse me.
I had one comment. In terms of the actual investments that we've got, are we doing anything into renewables at all?
Yeah, part of the London CIV's infrastructure fund is around renewables. We haven't actually put any. They haven't actually drawn down on that part of the infrastructure fund yet, but there will be some.
You're revising the investment strategy, are you? You're currently revising the investment strategy. I mean, that says already.
That's correct. The pension fund committee's already taken a decision to invest about 7.5% of the fund in the London Civ Infrastructure Fund, and that's being called gradually as the investments start up, and part of that is around renewables. But I don't think the renewables bit is in the calls that we've had so far. So we've got up to about 2% of the got up to about 1%, sorry, of the fund is now in the infrastructure fund. The target, the commitment is to 7%. You know, and we'll be moving there by some time in early 2023, I believe.
Chair, could I ask one question, please?
Yes.
We've previously been told that McLeod was unlikely to have great impact on the fund. And reference is made to it on page 15 or page 37 of the agenda, whichever number you like to look at. And has there been any assessment of how we're going to implement that, and whether it's administratively burdensome, and also what the financial cost of it might be?
Right.
Well, the
So-
overall cost for local government, it turns out to be much higher than anybody ever envisaged, because in the announcements made last week or the week before, a very large cost was given for the whole of the pension fund thing. I went to a seminar on it earlier this week, and but I don't know about Harrow and the impact on Harrow and how much administrative work is involved in sorting it all out for Harrow.
We've started to look at that with Hymans Robertson. They're able to run a report drawing on the data from our fund to estimate roughly how many people may be affected, and from that we can come up we'll be able to come up with a likely resource estimate in terms of the amount of staff time we'll need to do the necessary work that we'll have to do. Some of that will involve validating data from employers, and then rerunning calculations for a significant group of members. And it's essentially will be virtually anyone who was an active member at the 2012 date and the 1st of April 2014. So you're looking at probably 25% of the fund, and it will be more than that for certain employers. It'll depend on the demographic profile of the employers as well, and of course it will affect people who are still working, but also it will affect people who've retired. It will affect the estate or the dependents of people who've died, and it will affect people who've left the authority and become deferred members or transferred elsewhere. So there'll be a significant amount of calculations to be done. So it will be administratively burdensome, and we're still looking to quantify that and then cost that out.
And
do
you envisage dealing with that in-house, or will you need external help to do it? Possibly a bit of both. I think we haven't finalised our position on that yet, but I'd imagine it'll be a bit of both. One of the other practical things is, of course, the regs for the precise implementation haven't yet been produced. So whilst we can get an idea of the sort of work we're going to have to do in terms of the precise impacts and the financial cost to the fund and employers, is something that will be dependent on the regs.
Well, perhaps we could ask for a full report at the next meeting if it's, if you'll have made some progress for the next meeting, and it'd be quite useful to set out the effects on the Harrow Fund as far as you know it. I mean, we'll review that before we get to the next agenda, but it would be useful to have a report specifically on that. I think as it's such a large area. Yeah,
we can certainly do a report on it, Chair. Whether it will be a staging post will depend on.
That's fine. I would accept that. I mean, you're not likely to complete it in no time at all. So that's fine.
No, I think you can. It's enormous. It's absolutely an enormous. Again, through all those people's records, is going to be it is going to be mind-boggling. If I can't, good luck. I would say to that. It's good. I mean, I wish the staff were handling it. It's difficult.
It's one thing after another, really, because you've just done all that for graduated pensions, gone through everybody's records and worked out the effects. But the difficulty of that one was you had to deal with the inland revenue, which added another layer of complexity to it. At least you won't have that with this one, but still, it's one thing after another, really, isn't it? And but they are very administratively burdensome to sort out. But a progress report would be good, really, when setting out the current position, because you should know the regulations by then as well.
Yeah, and some of these people will have been people who were transferred in, for example, the lawyers who were transferred in from Barnet, and some of them will be people who went out. And I don't envy you doing the job, honestly. I really don't. It's a very difficult job to face.
Yeah. Okay, well then, can we move on? We'll go to the Pensions Administration Performance Monitoring Report. which is pages 89, I think.
Yeah, I'll be brief on this one, Chair. This one summarises the work of the team to the end of June. As we noted earlier, that we've got quite a small team, and of course it's been a complex period for them with everybody working remotely. In the quarter there's been a net increase of about 50 members. So whilst the number of retired people has gone up, the number of deferred pensioners has gone down, and there's been a small net decrease in active members. There have been no breaches of the law, no disputes, and the benefit statements were all sent out on time. So those are all good news stories. The performance stats are set out in Annex 1. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Have you got any points to raise, Councillor Lee, Gerald?
Well, just that, I mean, I'm not that concerned about it in that it's the one that goes down to 37.5, where it hasn't in the Harrow performance against the calculation and notification of ill health benefits within 3 days. I'm not overly concerned about it because it was 87% in 5 days. So, you know, we're talking about a day or two late, and you and if you set yourself a 3-day target, that is really very, very difficult. And it's the same issue arises in the top one, issuing letter and notifying a dependent's benefit in 5 days. 100% gets done in 5 days. Okay, 2/3 of them in 3 days. I don't. You know, I don't find that really particularly difficult. It's still, from my point of view, I would say that this was an excellent performance.
Yeah, I think that's right. And of course, you bear in mind there probably aren't all that many either, which distorts the percentage somewhat as well.
Yes.
And some might be more complicated than others. So no, I think overall, I've always thought that Harrow's administration was really very good indeed.
I agree.
Yeah. Thank you for that,
Thank
Chair.
you.
We'll pass that on.
Yeah, please
Yes,
do tell
please
the
do, 'cause I
staff
think
we
they do.
appreciate the hard work and effort they make for this. We really do. And they should be commended for the performance. Absolutely.
Yeah, I'd like to, just to say the same. I completely agree on the staff effort. That's one thing which I have sent across to Dawn, which I did mention that I want to put us forward for an LPAF award, and I can talk about putting our nomination forward, and I think we definitely should do that. There are some options for us to do that. I'm not sure whether it's in the agenda, whether we can slip it in somewhere, an AOB, but I think it's something worth talking about and actually getting recognition of the good efforts of the staff. I think there's one which is on management and governance, so maybe we could go for that one, or I'm happy to talk offline on this.
Okay. All right. Shall we move on? Then we get to item 10, which is of course a difficult one, really. Dawn will perhaps update us, or Jeremy, on where you are on this recruitment process.
Yeah, I can update where we are, Chair, and essentially we've as set out in the report, we're fishing in a relatively small pool for board members in the sense that we're looking for people who meet the definition of a representative of the non-council employers and a representative of the active scheme members, and we have communicated with those groups in order to stress the importance of nominating a member and invited nominations from those groups. As yet, I've had a couple of expressions of interest from people in regard to the active member role, but I haven't had any formal applications yet, Chair. But we did give people a deadline of the 30th of September, so that's where we are currently. Thank you.
I'm amazed and surprised that we don't get any union interest in this from the point of view of active members' representation, because Unison certainly have been very active on a lot of pension boards. So it's a bit sad that we can't get any interest in this particular case.
Yeah.
And I mean, I don't know where you go from this really, because clearly we need more members. We can't, you know, it's very difficult to continue with just 3 of us. Well, we have to turn up for every meeting regardless. We should be, you know, it's all right when we're doing teams, we can do that from our sick beds, but it's not an ideal situation really, is it?
No, I would agree with that.
Have you got any ideas about what you do next? I mean, how are you going to approach this?
Well, I think we'll definitely get the role that Jeremy's explained filled. I think the other's going to be a challenge. Yeah.
It's a pity because we did have such a very good representative from the academy originally. And if I'd have realised that it was going to be as difficult as this to recruit somebody, I might have lent on him a bit to stay on, because he was actually very good indeed. And it's really, and he would, you know, he did genuinely contribute, and he was a very, very good member of the board. So it's a bit sad really, but and I suppose most of your other employees are fairly small, and
that's
so
correct.
If you've got a large, like East Sussex, where I chaired they had the University of Sussex in there. One, and the director of finance of the University of Sussex was only too willing to come in and do the external one, but you haven't got anybody like that in your fund as employers, have you? They're all fairly small.
I would say they're all small employers. The biggest of them has 300 members, a big chunk of whom are pensioners.
I think the trouble was that when John Royal, the union guy, I think he was from the GMD, when he was on the board, I'm not sure he fully understood what the purpose of the board was, but in any event, because he's an observer, or I don't know if he still is, but he was an observer at the pension committee, he rather thought he got more out of that, and he could see no point in doing both. And I don't know how we got round, how that's got round. I don't know whether the arrangements in Harrow are such that it means that this is something that's not available to Unison, or I just it's now been a difficulty for so long. Both of them have been a difficulty for so long. I think we were told previously that there was a convention or meeting of the heads and deputy heads, or the chairs of governors of governing bodies, and they would be asked, but it's never got anywhere, and I think it's becoming critical, frankly, and that's quite apart from the legal point. It's just critical, and it looks like we're limping along, and frankly I'm embarrassed about it from the point of view that we don't know if and when the pensions regulator might, just by spot checks, decide to say, well, this just isn't good enough, and I don't really want to see Harrow's name blazoned that, you know, that this isn't, however it's described. And it bothers me, actually, and I've thought about it quite a lot, because I just don't like being in that position, and it certainly caused me to think about, well, you know, if this is just carrying on, what's my position? Because we were told at the beginning, well, you know, you've got this responsibility. It's to do with governance, and I feel very, very uncomfortable about it.
Well, but the thing is, I don't think there's any lack of effort. I mean, there's been a tremendous effort to try and get nominations. It's just that there doesn't seem to be anybody in the pool who's biting, so we're not, making progress. It's difficult to see what the regulator could do, really, in terms of the fact that he wouldn't be able to conjure anybody up if we failed to conjure anybody up.
Well,
so
everybody got an annual report who was an active member. We could, for example, have included a document with that, asking people to come forward.
You mean in the benefit thing, the annual benefit?
The annual benefits statement. Something could have been included with that.
Well,
and there are, I mean, that's just by way of example. If we and there must be other documents regularly going out from some part of the authority to the bodies in question. If not, we need to do something, needs to go out specifically for the purpose. And maybe it needs to go to the chairs of the governing bodies, not just to the principals or head teachers.
but I believe there was an employers meeting and it was raised there, so there has been an attempt to involve employers in this. However, well, I mean, okay, well, we can't do anything anyway, so we ought to wait the 30th September. We'll hope that you get a nomination for an active member. That at least will give us an extra member for the board before our next meeting. And we'll have to urge you, I suppose, to have one more attempt with the employers, as there are only 39 of them or something. It isn't a huge job to try and spread the word again and say, look, we really are in. It's important from their point of view, in as much as when we get to the employers' contributions next time, they will whinge about the extra expense and things. This is a chance for them to have some say in the governance of that and to make sure that they're happy with it. And you know, it is a bit irritating that they're not taking up that opportunity, I suppose. But I mean, I understand that they're small. And it's not burdensome. I mean, you know, the number of meetings we have a year is not great. And so it's a fairly low contribution to ensure that the employers are represented.
No, totally agree, Chair.
So I think, you know, we'll have to ask you to have another go at the employers and we'll hope you find an active representative. But I don't really think as a board we can do any more than that, really. I mean, you know, we can't go out. I'm not willing to walk through the streets of Harrow with a sandwich board. But perhaps Gerald, we could persuade him to do that.
I am confident, Chair, that we will get the active member role filled from how we're doing that within the authority.
Okay.
I am confident we'll get that post filled.
Okay. Well, we'll have to leave it with you. There's nothing more I can suggest, really.
I was gonna talk about this as so we've mentioned before, but can we give a monetary incentive for people to turn up to the meetings? Would that help at all?
I think if the active member that we're trying to recruit from within the authority, we can't pay them a sum of money, but obviously if they attend a board meeting or in preparation for the board, they can just do that within their work time.
Okay, and for anyone outside of the active and the employer stuff, can we put a monetary incentive and say, like, if you're a trade union or you work for them, you come to the meeting, then we can pay something towards that?
I would have to check on that, Councillor, unless Jeremy knows, because I think it's all governed by the members' allowances document, which states how people attending boards are paid. So I would need to check on that for you, Councillor Lee.
Yeah, and I think the other question with the trade union rep, if the trade union rep's a council employee, he or she would be covered by Dawn's previous point.
Okay, but if they're not, then at least we can give them some money for attending, and maybe that might help out and say, if you're eligible, then you can have some money towards attending. I don't know, I'm just trying to think. Sometimes sometimes money talks. As well as that, on the council side, I'm the only member. Why don't we open up to more people to being members? I think we've had this discussion before. Why is it only one? I know we can't have reserve, so if we can't have reserve, just have more members, and then we just, if they can't attend, then at least we've got quorum on it.
The only difficulty is it's got to be in balance. So there's got to be a balance between the employers' representatives and the other side, isn't there? They're supposed to be the same number. So if you increase the number of members, you'd have to increase the numbers of the other side of the equation. And as we can't get, that'd be doubly difficult.
Well, that's what I was going to say, Chair. You have to, as you say, you have to balance. You have to have equal numbers of employer and employee reps. And if we're struggling to get one employee rep, why would we find it easier to recruit two?
Yeah. Okay. Well, we'll have to wait and see what you come up with, and perhaps you'll keep us informed. I'm sure that the flags will fly over the Civic Centre when you make an appointment or we get a successful nomination, and we'll learn about it at that point in time.
Dawn, can I ask a question, please, about remuneration then? I'll two questions, actually. One is, I think it was the case that when we had the college rep, he did receive the same as you pay to me. It's relatively it's a very small amount of money, but I assume that's been offered to the college people. And secondly, is it not? I get the point about the terms of employment of the council employees, but is it not possible to give them an honorarium?
I think in terms of your first question, Gerald, I think the active member that we would recruit in replace of study would get the same terms. So yes, they would receive a monetary sum. Yeah. In terms of a council employee, we just can't do that, because the principle is that if the council employee attends, obviously they're being, say like if the meeting is in the afternoon, they will get that time off work for which they are being paid to attend the board. So we can't remunerate them on top. I get that point, but we're now only meeting at 6:30. We used to meet at 2:30. I take the point. No, and I think I understand your point, but to be fair, councillor, no council officer gets remunerated for attending evening meetings, and I think that would be part of what, you know, that's part of it's part of the responsibility of taking on the role, is that for three meetings a year you'll either have to attend an evening meeting or an afternoon meeting. Yeah, I get that. Yeah, it is difficult. Yeah, I can see that point. It is difficult, because what we have to just be a little bit careful of is, you know, and it's helpful that you do understand the difficulties, Gerald. We need to be careful that we don't create any precedents or start treating people very differently, and we end up with challenges around that. We used to pay committee officers below a certain grade for going to committee in the evening. I don't know on that. I don't know if that's the same now or whether it's just part of somebody's role. Okay.
I think there must be people which get overtime and things like that. No, we don't. No one at all in the council. No, we don't pay overtime. You see, for example, we don't pay overtime to people. It's not something that we do. Some people get contractual overtime. This post wouldn't attract that. And also, if it was somebody on a management grade and above, you do not get overtime for any extra hours. And once again, during COVID, like some people had to work longer hours, which probably wouldn't be on senior management. What, we didn't remunerate them for that? That'd be quite worrying. Some people will have. Some people will have got overtime during COVID, but some people just did the work. So how did we sign that off? What do you mean, sign it off, councillor? To give people overtime, we must have signed that off and said, yep, during COVID they can have overtime. Yeah, so but that will have been. Yeah, but I think that's very different to attending a board meeting. If a social worker worked for 7 days a week during COVID, they will obviously be remunerated for that by their line manager. I think that is quite different than somebody turning up to attending a board. We might be in breach or something, unfortunately. I think this is quite serious, so we do need to think outside the box. I think it's quite serious, breaching. Oh, James, when I was an officer, I never ever got paid for overtime. I did loads of it, and I'm sure Dawn does exactly that now, as do many of her colleagues working for Harrow Council. And I think I had to accept it as goes with the job. I think, lots of people who work for the council, especially those who attend evening meetings, but it isn't exclusively them. Lots of people work for hours way beyond their contracted time, and that's just how that's how the authority runs. And the same would apply to teachers and all sorts of other people. It's what goes on. Do they get the time back in lieu at least? Can we give them
No,
that so they can say
Look,
like,
it's a fiction. It's a fiction, isn't it? They have to. They actually they're giving it to the council. It's like my daughters are civil servants. They give tons of work every week, free to the government.
It's one of those great privileges of working for a local authority that you're allowed to go to evening members meetings with the elected members. And so many times I've sat there until even 3 o'clock in the morning at rate making council meetings, thoroughly enjoying myself. And I've been grateful of the opportunity for doing that. So I don't think there's any chance in getting any of this. Really, it doesn't work like that. And the thing is about COVID, I'm now working currently in a children's trust. Yes, people have been paid extra for COVID. It is rather a one-off situation, and it's very difficult for them. And also, of course, the government did offer or make a contribution to local authorities to cover their COVID costs. So it hasn't, or they haven't paid all of it, of course, because they're like that. But 50% of the cost probably will be paid by central government. And that is a rather one-off situation. I don't think you can compare that with visiting a pension board, really. So anyway, we'll wait and see what happens in September. And then we'll move on to the work programme. On page 899. Where is that? We've done it's dark in here. 99, anything on the work programme? I mean, presumably now we've made the big step of having a virtual meeting. We can meet again in 3 months if the situation won't have changed. I mean, I think the way things are going, there'll be no change, will there, until well into 2021 on how we meet and that sort of thing, really. And also, and of course, people have got rather used to this way of working as well, which means that they can't see the benefits of actually changing it particularly fast until things are really safe and I think, I mean, the whole world has changed, really, hasn't it? Because so many staff have got used to working from home, and it will be difficult to change things again. So I guess we will meet again virtually, but and we'll have to see.
In addition to the things that are listed in the table on page 100, Chair, we'll add in the 2 items that you've mentioned this evening, and a position statement on McLeod, and an update on the PERC performance review item.
Yeah, fine, thank you. And the 2nd of December 2020 is the next meeting. So
yeah.
Okay. Anything else on the work programme? No. Well, in that case, that seems to any other business. I suppose I have to ask if there's any other business. Nobody told me there's any other business, really. If there's anything that can't wait, that you haven't managed to work in on any of the other items.
So as I mentioned, the LAPF awards, can someone talk to me about that and discuss that, about trying to put nominations forward and see if we've got any categories that we can put forward for that?
We'll happily catch up with you if you'd like, Councillor Lee. Outside of this meeting, we can contact you if you'd like.
I'd really like that. That would be great.
We'll contact you.
I've spoken to some of the judges whenever I go to that event, and they're very surprised that Harry doesn't put put someone forward. So
okay,
yeah.
Well, we'll contact you offline, Jeremy and I, about that.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Yeah.
I'll reiterate. I think the service provided, the in-house service that Harrow Store provides, which is quite different to what many other people have, is absolutely first rate. Well done to your staff, Dawn. It's just very much to be praised.
No, thank you. We do. I do really appreciate you saying thank you to the team. And we do only have a team of 7. I've just counted it now, Gerald. So I will pass on your thanks, and they'll really gratefully receive it.
Yeah.
Yes, please do pass on the thanks to the pension board. It is very good. So
just to sell benefits of the team as well. They always get their data to the actuary first, and it's always absolutely spot on. So they do a very good job. So thank you for mentioning them.
I'll just tell you that I have one current employment, and so I have an employer's benefit statement this year, and it was complete rubbish. Well, it was very good, really, because they tell me that my pension is 3 times my annual salary, which seemed to me to be just about right, really. But clearly their computer can't do the proper calculations. So, it was brilliant.
Take the
I
money.
thoroughly enjoyed it.
Not good news for the fund if too many of you are like that.
No, that's true. Yes, that would rather wreck it, wouldn't it? Anyway, so I think that's it. So thank you very much indeed.
you.
Thank you for everybody who's organised this evening, and it's all gone very well, and we're very grateful to you. And thank you for all the attendees, and thank you for Dawn and Jeremy and the other officers for coming to give up their time for nothing. Thank you very much indeed.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Bye bye.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
Cheers. Good night.